I am the king, and all of this is my land.
Excuse me, sire. I'd like some land, please.
If you would like some land, you must pay me for it.
Fantastic. I will pay you for it. Then do I get to keep the land?
Only as long as I want you to.
But how will I make sure that you want me to keep it?
As long as you pledge your loyalty to me.
I pledge my loyalty to you. I pledge that I will give you some of my gold, some of my crops, and if you ever need warriors for a war or for defense, I will send them to you.
Feudalism is a social structure. It's an arrangement of people into classes in society, but it's not just an arrangement to make them look pretty. It's an arrangement for the purpose of getting people what they need.
So I'm the king, and you might think that I have everything that I need, but I actually need other people. Those people out there, they provide me food, otherwise I would starve. Those people over there, they provide me protection, otherwise I might be attacked. I am always looking for someone to provide for my needs, and in exchange, I will provide for their needs. If they need a piece of land, a place to stay, I've got land for them. There is a price, however.
Feudalism is best represented by this diagram. Feudalism was a system in place in Western Europe during the Middle Ages.
A social hierarchy is an arrangement of people in order of their rank for what power and privilege that they have.
It looked a little different in different civilizations, but all civilizations had some type of social hierarchy, a social system of people who had more power and privilege and wealth, and people who had less. You're going to recognize patterns. This system is a power structure. Recognize where the power is. I want you to understand the power structure of the European system of feudalism, but I also want you to use your study as a way to recognize power structures in other civilizations and in your own world. You will come across power structures across your life, and it's important that you understand how they work, why they work, and how they can change. Look at this diagram and consider which people would have the most power, which people would be satisfied with their power, and which people would most want change. This feudal system had been used in France since the Normans conquered it in around 900 CE, and it had been used ever since. It was then introduced to England following the conquest of William the Conqueror and spread this system throughout Western Europe. It was a simple but effective way of controlling society centered on the power of the king. The king owned all of the land, and he was free to give land or loan land to anybody he saw fit. He could give a piece of land to somebody. That was called a fief, and that fief would be essentially a loan or a lease. Like, you can borrow this land and have your castle on it, and you're going to borrow it from me for as long as I give you that privilege. And he fully trusted people that made a sworn oath to defend him, to serve him, to provide him with whatever he needed. This oath was a promise. It was a formal ceremony whereby the king believed that he could trust this person, and that person would become a vassal to the king. The king would be the most powerful person, and the vassal would be somebody that's serving the person above them. In this case, it's the king. Now, the person who received this land would then be able to give out some of their land to other people, where they would become a lord of the land. And lord of the land would be somebody who's above somebody else. So the lord would have vassals, and some of those vassals would be lords to other people. Because they owned land, land was a basis for wealth. In return for the land that they received from the king, they had to serve on the royal council. They had to pay some sort of rent to the king, where it was money or goods or services, and they would have to provide soldiers to fight for the king if the king needed defense. Those soldiers would be in the form of knights. You have to understand that at this time, none of these kings had armies. There was no armies running around that if the king needed to go to war, he would call up his army. He would rely on knights, and he got knights by calling on his vassals to provide him with knights. These vassals also had to provide food and lodging to the king and the king's entourage. If the king was ever traveling through his country, he needed a place to stay. These people would provide that to him with no questions asked. That was their duty. So at the top of the social structure, you have the kings. And then below them, you have the barons. And below them, you have the knights. And below them, you have the peasants, the lower class. These are the people that had no privilege and no power in terms of of European feudalism, we call these people serfs. Serfs were people, you might think of them like slaves. They were bound to the land. They had no privileges. They could not leave the land. The land belonged to whoever was borrowing the land from the king. The duty of the serf was to provide food and service to whoever was the lord of the manor, whether it was a baron or a knight or a king. These were the people that did the physical work to keep a manor working, to keep crops growing, to the blacksmith, to be the carpenter, to be the baker, to do all these skilled things to make sure that the people that were above them on the social hierarchy were provided for.